Good morning, everyone. Let me ask you something. How many times have you felt tired and said to yourself, I'll do it tomorrow? Or told yourself, I'm too exhausted, I need a break. Even though deep down you knew what you really needed wasn't rest, but movement? We all know that feeling. The weight of fatigue settling on your shoulders like a fog. Your body says stop, your mind says later. But let me tell you something powerful. Everyone loves the idea of motivation. It's inspiring, it's flashy, and it feels good. We watch motivational videos, listen to powerful speeches, and for a moment we feel unstoppable. We feel ready to conquer the world, to push through anything. But that feeling fades, it always does. That's the thing about motivation. It's unreliable. It comes and goes like a wave. One day it's there, the next it's gone. That's why relying on motivation is a trap. If you only move when you feel motivated, you'll move very little. Because most days you won't feel like it. You'll feel tired, uninspired, distracted. And in those moments, if all you've trained yourself to rely on is motivation, you'll quit. That's where discipline comes in. Discipline isn't glamorous. It's not loud or flashy, but it is consistent. Discipline is the decision to act regardless of how you feel. It's the quiet voice in your head that says, do it anyway. Discipline doesn't ask how tired you are. It doesn't care if you're not in the mood. It simply says, this is what needs to be done. Now go do it. And if you listen to that voice more than the one whispering excuses, you begin to change your life. We live in a world obsessed with feelings. Listen to your body. Honor your energy. Rest when you need it. And yes, rest has its place. But let's not confuse fatigue with laziness. Let's not confuse a temporary lack of motivation with a need to stop. Because too often people use feelings as permission to procrastinate. They say they're tired, but really they're bored. They say they need a break, but really they're avoiding discomfort. And that discomfort, that resistance, is the very thing they need to push through. When you force yourself to move, even when you're tired, something powerful happens. You break the pattern of emotional dependence. You stop being ruled by your feelings, and you start taking control of your actions. You prove to yourself that you're not a slave to your mood. You become the kind of person who acts in spite of it. That's a game changer. That's where confidence is born. Not from feeling good, but from knowing you'll show up whether you feel good or not. Think of any great achiever, athlete, artist, or entrepreneur. Do you think they reached the top because they were always motivated? No. They got there because they had a system, a routine, a standard that didn't depend on how they felt. They trained when they were tired. They worked when they were uninspired. They moved when their body said stop because their mind said go. And over time, that consistency built greatness. Here's the truth. You won't always feel like it. In fact, the more you chase your goals, the more resistance you'll feel. There will be days when everything in you wants to quit. Days when the bed feels warmer, the couch feels softer, and doing nothing feels safer. But those are the days that matter most, because anyone can work hard when it's easy. What separates the average from the exceptional is what they do when it's not. Discipline is a muscle. And like any muscle, it grows through use. Every time you choose to act instead of wait, to move instead of stall, to rise instead of rest, you're strengthening that muscle. You're building a version of yourself that can be trusted, not just when things feel right, but when they don't. And that's the kind of person who wins, not once, but over and over again. So the next time you feel tired, the next time you hear that voice saying, just skip it today, stop and ask yourself, who do I want to be? The person who gives in to the feeling, or the person who pushes through it? Because at the end of the day, your habits become your identity. Your actions shape your future. And discipline, not motivation, is the foundation of all lasting success. Force yourself to move when you feel tired. Not because it's easy, but because it's necessary. Not because you feel like it, but because it's who you're choosing to become. In the end, it's not the easy days that define you. It's the hard ones. And when those days come, and they will, let discipline lead the way. Would you like versions of this for different audiences, e.g. athletes, students, entrepreneurs?
You said
expand it 2 into 700 words without hitting. ChatGPT said, of course. Here's an expanded version of key point 2. Fatigue is a mental barrier as much as a physical one. Into a 700-word motivational essay written without headings or bullet points. Tiredness is real. We all feel it. After long days, sleepless nights, emotional stress, or hard work, it's normal to feel drained. But here's the part many people miss. Not all fatigue is physical. In fact, most of the time what we call tiredness is actually mental resistance, the brain's way of protecting us from discomfort, from effort, from growth. And if you learn to recognize the difference between real physical exhaustion and the illusion of being tired, you'll unlock a level of control and potential most people never reach. You've probably experienced this before without realizing it. You drag yourself through the day, yawning, unmotivated, convinced you're too tired to work out or finish that task. Then a friend calls with exciting news, or you hear your favorite song and suddenly you're alert, smiling, moving with energy you swore you didn't have just minutes earlier. What changed? Not your body, your mindset. Your perception of energy shifted. That's because a large part of fatigue is perception. Your mind interprets stress, boredom, or emotional pressure as exhaustion. It convinces you to slow down, stop, or quit, not because you're incapable, but because it's trying to protect you from discomfort. But here's the truth. Growth lives on the other side of that discomfort. If you always stop when you feel tired, you'll never discover how much you're truly capable of. Most people live their lives far below their potential because they've trained themselves to listen to the voice of fatigue without questioning it. They hear, "I'm tired," and immediately retreat, rest, or shut down. They never ask, "Am I really tired or am I just unmotivated?" The mind is incredibly powerful, but it's also tricky. It hates being pushed. It craves comfort. So it manufactures excuses and wraps them in the language of fatigue. It says things like, "You've worked hard today, you deserve a break," or "It won't make a difference if you skip today." And while rest and recovery are essential, there's a difference between intentional rest and avoidance. One recharges you, the other holds you back. When you force yourself to move, even when you feel mentally tired, something fascinating happens. Your energy often comes back. Momentum builds. Your body responds. Your brain, which was trying to shut things down, starts to re-engage. You realize you weren't as tired as you thought. You were just resisting the first step. That first step is the hardest part. It's getting off the couch, tying your shoes, opening your laptop, or showing up. But once you do that, the rest often follows. Athletes experience this all the time. They show up to training feeling sluggish, thinking there's no way they'll perform well, but they warm up, start moving, and suddenly they're in flow. Their body kicks in, their focus sharpens, they realize they had more in the tank than they believed. And it's not just athletes. This applies to anyone. A student who forces themselves to study after a long day often finds they absorb more than expected. A writer who opens their laptop and types a sentence despite feeling drained can end up writing pages. That's the power of recognizing that mental fatigue is often just friction, not a full stop. Understanding this changes everything. You stop treating tiredness as a reason to quit and start treating it as a signal to challenge. You start building a habit of moving anyway, of questioning your limits, of recognizing that the barrier isn't always real, it's often psychological. You stop saying, "I can't," and start saying, "Let me try." And that shift in mindset is where confidence grows. Because every time you move through mental fatigue, you prove to yourself that you're stronger than the feeling, that you can function without being at 100%, that you're not controlled by your emotions, but guided by your choices. Life will throw you countless moments where your mind says, "Not today." But what separates those who succeed from those who don't isn't that they never feel tired, it's that they don't let tiredness decide for them. They act in spite of it. They honor real exhaustion with proper rest, but they challenge mental fatigue with action. And the more they do it, the easier it becomes to know the difference. So the next time you feel tired, pause. Ask yourself, is this physical exhaustion? Or is it my mind resisting what it knows I need to do? Then do the one thing that changes everything. Move, even just a little. That small act of defiance, that refusal to be ruled by a fleeting feeling, is how you train yourself to push through. That's how you build endurance, not just in your body, but in your mind. And that's how you become unstoppable. Let me know if you'd like this version tailored for a specific setting, like athletes, students, or professionals. You said, expand it 3 into 700 words without heading. ChatGPT said, certainly. Here's an expanded 700-word version of Key Point 3. Action creates momentum, written as a motivational piece without headings or bullet points. There's a strange but powerful truth about progress that many people never fully understand. You don't need to feel ready to start. You just need to start. So many people wait. They wait for clarity, for energy, for motivation, for the perfect time. But the perfect time rarely comes, and motivation is inconsistent. What people don't realize is that movement itself, taking any step forward, is what creates the motivation they're waiting for. Action generates momentum, and momentum changes everything. Think of a heavy train sitting still on a track. At rest, it takes enormous energy to get it to move even an inch. But once it begins rolling just a little at a time, the effort required to keep it moving becomes less. Eventually, it gathers speed, and before long, it's charging ahead with unstoppable force. That's how momentum works. And just like that train, your progress starts with a single push, a small action, a decision to do something, even if it's small, even if it feels insignificant. People often underestimate what one small action can do. They think, if I can't do it all right now, what's the point? So they wait. They delay. They get stuck in a cycle of inaction where the lack of movement makes everything feel heavier, more difficult. But what they miss is that starting, even imperfectly, unlocks energy. The act of doing something ignites focus. It gives you feedback. It wakes up your body, and it silences the doubts that grow louder when you sit still. Momentum doesn't come from overthinking. It doesn't come from planning forever or endlessly visualizing success. It comes from doing, from stepping into discomfort and giving yourself proof that you can, that you are capable of more than you thought. You don't need to run a marathon today. You just need to take the first step. You don't have to finish the project in one sitting. You just need to open the document and start writing the first line. Once you do, something changes. The resistance you felt starts to dissolve. You begin to focus. You begin to feel different. Most of the time, the hardest part of anything is simply beginning. The moment before you take action is where doubt lives. It's where fear whispers, what if you fail? Or what if you're not good enough? But when you move, when you act, those voices lose their power. Because now you're not just thinking, you're doing. You're creating. You're building evidence that you can move forward, even if it's messy, even if you don't feel ready. The more you act, the easier it becomes. That's the magic of momentum. It works in your favor. It becomes a force that carries you forward, even when you're not fully aware of it. It changes how you think about challenges. Problems that felt overwhelming start to shrink. Tasks you avoided now seem manageable. Confidence grows, not because things got easier, but because you moved through the weight of inaction and found your strength on the other side. Momentum also creates belief. When you do something consistently, even if it's small, you start to see yourself differently. You stop saying, I wish I could, and start saying, I am. Identity is shaped not just by thoughts, but by repeated actions. If you want to be someone who follows through, who finishes what they start, who keeps going even when it's hard, you don't become that person all at once. You become that person one small action at a time. And it all starts with motion. When you feel stuck, lost, overwhelmed, or tired, don't think too far ahead. Don't try to solve everything in one giant leap. Just focus on what's right in front of you. What's the next move? What can you do right now with what you have, where you are? That's how momentum starts, with one rep, one page, one conversation, 1 minute of effort, and then another, and then another, and then another. People who succeed aren't necessarily the ones who started out with the most motivation. They're the ones who acted when they didn't feel like it, who kept moving when others stopped, who understood that motion leads to progress, and progress builds belief. That energy doesn't precede action, it follows it. So don't wait for the perfect mood, the perfect day, or the perfect plan. Don't wait for the doubt to disappear. Start now. Start small. Just move. Because once you do, you'll start to feel it. The shift, the rhythm, the lift. That's momentum. And once it's on your side, there's no telling how far you can go. Let me know if you'd like this turned into a short video script, a poster, or a talk outline. You said, expand it 4 into 700 words without heading. ChatGPT said, certainly. Here's a 700-word expansion of key point 4. Growth happens in discomfort, written as a continuous motivational piece without headings. Comfort feels good. It's warm, familiar, and safe. It's the place where everything is predictable, where there are no risks, no fear of failure, no pain. That's why so many people cling to it. But comfort, for all its appeal, is not where growth happens. It's where stagnation lives. If you stay comfortable for too long, you stop evolving. You stop challenging yourself. You stop becoming more. Growth, real growth, the kind that transforms you mentally, physically, and emotionally, only begins when you step into discomfort. That discomfort you avoid, that resistance you feel before doing the hard thing, that's the gatekeeper to your next level. It's easy to stay in routines that don't challenge us, to do just enough to get by, to avoid what feels difficult or uncertain. But when you live like that, you never find out who you really are or what you're capable of. The truth is, every skill you want to learn, every goal you want to achieve, every version of yourself you hope to become lives on the other side of discomfort. And the only way to get there is to walk straight into it. That's the reality no one wants to hear, but it's the reality that changes lives. Discomfort is not the enemy. It's a signal. It tells you that you're in new territory. It means you're stretching beyond what you've known, pushing the edges of your abilities. That ache in your muscles during a hard workout, that's your body getting stronger. That nervousness before giving a presentation or trying something new, that's your mind adapting to pressure. That frustration when you're learning a new skill and not getting it right away, that's your brain rewiring itself to get better. Growth is not always pleasant, but it is always worth it. People often confuse comfort with happiness. They think if they avoid stress and difficulty, they'll be at peace. But the peace they find in comfort is fragile and short-lived. Over time, it turns into frustration, boredom, or regret. Why? Because deep down, we're built to grow. We're wired to evolve, to strive, to improve. There's a part of us that's always asking, can I do more? When you ignore that voice long enough, it becomes dissatisfaction. And the only way to silence that voice is to act on it, to do the hard thing, the uncomfortable thing, and prove to yourself that you can. Everyone wants change, but few want the discomfort that comes with it. We admire strong, successful, resilient people, but we don't always see what it took to become that way. It took them being uncomfortable, repeatedly. It took them showing up when they didn't feel ready, facing failure, getting up again. The courage to grow isn't about never feeling fear or pain. It's about stepping through it again and again because you know that's where your power is built. And the more you expose yourself to discomfort, the more resilient you become. What once felt overwhelming starts to feel manageable. Your threshold expands. You stop running from challenge and start welcoming it. Not because it's easy, but because you've learned that everything you want requires it. Confidence comes not from being comfortable, but from repeatedly choosing discomfort and realizing you survived it. You adapted, you grew, and you're stronger because of it. Discomfort also teaches you who you really are. It strips away the surface, the ego, the excuses. When you're under pressure, when things are difficult, that's when your true character comes out. That's when your limits get tested, and that's when you find out they're not as fixed as you thought. You discover you can handle more pain, more pressure, more responsibility than you ever gave yourself credit for. And that discovery doesn't just build success, it builds pride, it builds identity. So the next time something feels hard, uncomfortable, or unfamiliar, don't back away. Lean into it. Remind yourself that this is the moment where growth begins. This is the moment where you stop being who you were and start becoming who you're meant to be. Embrace the discomfort, not as punishment, but as preparation. Every great breakthrough is born out of struggle. Every transformation is paid for in effort. Discomfort is the price of admission to the life you really want. You don't have to leap headfirst into massive challenges every day, but you do have to stop avoiding the ones you know are calling your name. Speak up when you usually stay quiet. Try when you'd rather quit. Move when it's easier to sit still. Each time you do, you're proving to yourself that discomfort is not a danger, it's a doorway. And once you start walking through that doorway consistently, you'll find something on the other side that comfort could never give you. Strength, growth, and the realization that you were capable of more all along. Let me know if you'd like this rewritten for a speech, presentation, or podcast. You said, expand at 5 into 700 words without heading. ChatGPT said, certainly. Here's a 700-word expansion of Key Point 5, Consistency Builds Character, written as a motivational piece without headings or breaks. In a world obsessed with speed, shortcuts, and instant results, it's easy to forget the quiet power of consistency. We admire talent, celebrate success, and chase motivation like it's the secret ingredient to everything we want. But the truth is, talent fades without discipline. Motivation dies without follow-through. What truly builds greatness, what builds identity, strength, and confidence is consistency. Not once, not occasionally, but every single day, showing up for yourself, even when it's hard, even when it's boring, and especially when no one is watching. Because it's in those moments, those small decisions to keep going when quitting would be easier, that character is formed. Consistency is often overlooked because it doesn't shout. It doesn't grab attention like grand gestures or highlight reels. It's quiet. It's repetitive. It feels ordinary. But that ordinary effort, compounded over time, becomes extraordinary. Each time you choose to move when you feel tired, each time you do the work when no one claps for you, you are casting a vote for the kind of person you are becoming. And those votes matter. They shape your identity day by day, task by task, rep by rep. There's a reason the people who rise to the top, athletes, leaders, creators, often sound the same when asked how they got there. They say things like, I just kept showing up, or I stuck with it, or I didn't quit. It's not because they had some magical formula, it's because they mastered the art of consistency. They knew that greatness isn't built in one massive moment of brilliance, but in 1,000 small invisible choices to keep going. When you understand that, you stop chasing intensity and start respecting discipline. The most dangerous lie is the one that says, I'll do it tomorrow. Tomorrow turns into next week. Next week becomes never. Consistency isn't about doing everything perfectly every day. It's about doing something every day. It's not about being the best every time. You won't be, but it is about being there, being present, putting in effort, even if it's just a little. That's how momentum is built. That's how habits are formed. And that's how resilience is developed, not from giant leaps, but from steady, deliberate steps forward. When you stay consistent, even when it's inconvenient or unexciting, you begin to trust yourself. And that self-trust is one of the most powerful forces you can develop. It's what carries you through hard seasons. It's what tells you, I've been here before. I've done this before. I can do it again. You stop relying on external validation because you've built internal credibility. You know that no matter how you feel, you'll show up, you'll do the work, you'll stay in the fight. That's character. Not the image you show the world, but the quiet standard you hold when no one is looking. And let's be honest, some days consistency will feel like a grind. There will be days when you're tired, unmotivated, busy, or just mentally checked out. Those are the days when it matters most. Because anyone can act when things are easy. What defines you is what you do when it's not. Will you stick to the plan? Will you honor your word? Will you keep the promise you made to yourself when you were motivated, even now when you're not? That's where character is built. Not in the easy wins, but in the daily battle to stay disciplined. You don't need to be perfect. You don't need to be the best. You just need to be consistent. Show up. Do the work. Track your progress. Make the hard choice. And then do it again tomorrow. Over time, those choices stack up. They build strength. They sharpen your mind. They reshape your life. You stop seeing yourself as someone who tries. You become someone who follows through. That shift in identity is everything. Because when life throws challenges your way, and it always will, you'll be ready. Not because you're invincible, but because you're dependable. Because you've trained yourself to keep moving forward, no matter how slow, no matter how hard. So if you're tired, if you're discouraged, if you're wondering whether the small effort today really matters, let this be your reminder it does. It always does. Every rep counts. Every step counts. Every day you keep going, you are building something far more important than success. You're building you. And the version of you that keeps showing up over and over is the version that wins. Maybe not immediately, but inevitably. Let me know if you'd like this adapted into a video, voiceover, social post, or speech format. You said expand it 600 to 700 words without head. ChatGPT said, absolutely. Here's a 700-word expansion of key point 6, discipline outlasts motivation. Written as a continuous motivational piece without headings or breaks. Motivation is a powerful feeling. It can light a fire in you. It can make you feel unstoppable, like you're ready to conquer every challenge in your path. But motivation is also unpredictable. It comes and goes like the weather. One day you wake up energized, focused, and excited to chase your goals. The next you feel flat, tired, and disconnected from the very things you were once passionate about. And this is the trap so many people fall into. They wait for motivation to return before they take action. They treat motivation like a requirement for progress. But those who truly succeed, those who keep growing and winning over time, understand one simple truth. Discipline is what carries you when motivation disappears. Discipline doesn't care how you feel. It's not emotional. It's not inspired. It's not driven by mood. It's a decision, one you make again and again, regardless of your internal state. When you have discipline, you don't need to negotiate with yourself every day. You don't wake up and ask, do I feel like doing this? You just do it. Because it's what you said you'd do, because it aligns with your purpose, because you've built a standard that's higher than your excuses. That's the power of discipline. It turns effort into identity. It takes something temporary and transforms it into something permanent. You see, motivation is like a spark. It can ignite action, but it can't sustain it. It's great for getting started, but it's unreliable for the long haul. That's why so many people start strong but fizzle out. They get hyped about a goal, set big plans, and go all in until the excitement wears off. Then the work feels heavy, the habits feel hard, the results don't come fast enough, and they quit. Not because they're weak, but because they were depending on a feeling instead of building a system. Discipline is that system. It's the structure that holds you steady when the wind of motivation dies down. Discipline is built in the moments when it's hardest to act. It's built when you choose to go for a run instead of staying in bed. When you sit down to work even though your mind is screaming for distraction. When you make the tough decision that aligns with your goals rather than the easy one that gives you short-term comfort. Those decisions matter. They're not just about staying on track, they're about who you become. Every disciplined action is a vote for the kind of person who doesn't just talk about their goals, but lives in alignment with them. And the more you practice discipline, the less power motivation holds over you. You become consistent. You become focused. You stop relying on outside influences to drive you forward because the drive comes from within. You understand that progress isn't about intensity, it's about repetition. Doing the work on the days you feel like it and doing it again on the days you don't. That's what builds momentum. That's what builds resilience. That's what builds mastery. There's nothing wrong with motivation. When it shows up, use it, let it fuel you, let it remind you why you started. But don't depend on it. Don't make it your foundation, because there will be days when life gets heavy. When you're tired, when doubt creeps in, when you question everything. On those days, motivation will likely be nowhere to be found. But if you've trained yourself to act anyway, to move forward regardless, you'll stay on course. You'll keep climbing. You won't be perfect, but you'll be unshakable. Discipline isn't something you're born with. It's something you build. It's forged in the small moments, waking up early, following through on commitments, saying no when it's easier to say yes. It doesn't require talent. It doesn't require genius. It just requires commitment, a choice to do the right thing even when it's uncomfortable, a choice to keep your promises to yourself, and over time those choices stack up. They become who you are. You don't just do disciplined things, you become a disciplined person. And that kind of identity is powerful. It's the kind of identity that outlasts burnout, frustration, boredom, and doubt. So when you feel unmotivated, when everything in you says stop, rest, quit, remember this: you don't need to feel ready. You don't need to feel inspired. You just need to start. Lean on your discipline. Trust your habits. Let your actions speak louder than your emotions. Because at the end of the day, it's not about how you feel. It's about what you do. And if you keep doing the right thing, even when it's hard, you'll get where you're meant to go. Not by chance, not by motivation, but by discipline. And that will make all the difference.